Redditors assemble. r/askreddit. Serious. What's the creepiest, scariest thing you've seen, but no one believes you? I woke up to something. It sounded like a door shutting. At first I thought it was a dream, because I could hear it in the dream as I was waking up. Kinda like when someone calls your name when you're dreaming. But then I looked at my cat. His hair was completely standing up and he was beaming at my bedroom door. This was the moment when I got really scared. I know animals can pick up on that shit, and I thought he might know something's wrong. My cat doesn't do this type of thing unless a dog is in the room. So I looked over at the door, and the only way I can describe it is it looked like it was swaying, slowly, like it was breathing, like someone was standing on the other side of it trying to hear if I was awake. This swaying was accompanied by a shadow. I don't mean a supernatural shadow, but it looked like the shadow of a person behind the door. I was paralyzed in fear. I lied there for 5 minutes naked watching this door away. I considered yelling and trying to scare them away, but I was terrified someone might respond. I legitimately thought this was the moment where I will have to defend myself or be killed. I don't own a gun, but after 10 minutes or so I mustered up the courage to check every room in the house. I fricking checked every corner too, but there was no one there. I don't know what happened, but my evolutionary traits kicked in, and I completely believed someone was outside my door. Good friend in college had this happen, except there really was an intruder. Apparently, my buddy, small guy, maybe 5 feet 4 inches, but stocky, and his pit bull, very small pit comparatively, oddly enough, not scary at all, heard something and stared at their bedroom door for what he said felt like 5 minutes. Then someone actually came through the door and all hell broke loose. They fought their way through the house, friend in his underwear, out into the front lawn. My friend doesn't remember much, but according to the police report they may have knocked each other out and his pit was mauling the guy when the police arrived. Intruder lived, but he got fricked up pretty bad. Friend and dog were mostly fine if not, but a bit shaken. I wonder what my dog would do. He's a golden and I assume he would just bark and be terrified, but if an intruder would actually fight me. I went into a house that had no one home. I had permission, and their golden just walked out and rolled over wagging her tail. They didn't tell me they had a dog either. It was a good day. That is actually really scary. Did the intruder have a plan? Was he trying to rob the place or trying to hurt your friend? I saw a panther-sized black cat darting out of a water retention, artificial forest near a school in the desert. Logically, it shouldn't be able to survive there, but holy shit I saw it. Animal control wouldn't let that exist. There isn't really food enough for it, and the summers get dangerously hot if you've got black fur. Must have been 4 to 5 feet long. It doesn't make sense, but I 100% saw it. And so did the friend I was with. East Coast US here. 4 years we were told cougars don't live here. Local trail camps disagree. Life, finds a way. M8 here. Constantly told mountain lions don't live here. Bought land last year. Wanna guess what tracks we found in the snow? Too big to be a bobcat. Even hunters at the local Legion identified it as mountain lion before they were told where it was from. But he has family in MD. House is built into the side of a hill. Cougar jumps on roof and screams. You ever hear a cougar scream? Sounds like you're brutally killing a woman. They hear that and turn on porch lights. It jumps off the roof and hauls ass. Yet, my son's Phil got the trail cam shot of a cougar. SC Ohio. I used to have a buddy that lived in the same neighborhood, a few streets over. One night we were having a couple of beers in his backyard while playing cards. I had some things to do the next morning, so just before 10 I said my goodbyes and shoved off. It was a short walk, maybe 15 minutes door to door, so I never drove. Anyway, it was a nice night, uneventful trip, but when I got home, my roommate was coming out the front door, coffee in hand, and dressed for work. He gave me a funny look and said he thought I was asleep since my truck was in the driveway. I told him where I'd been and asked why he was going into work at night. That's when he kind of laughed and asked if I was drunk. We stared at each other for a minute and then he told me it was just after 5 in the morning and he was going in just like he usually did. In my entire life, I'd never felt more confused than I did in that moment. I could tell he was dead serious, but I knew I had just left my friend's house. I checked my phone and sure enough, 5-something in the AM, my roommate left for work. I paced circles in the living room for a bit, then called the friend whose house I just left. He groggily answered and confirmed I'd left at 10 the previous evening. I have no idea what happened during those 7 hours of my life, and it gives me chills to think about it all these years later. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't tired. No one could have slipped anything in either of the 2 Coors Lights I'd had. No known medical conditions that would have caused me to black out, and nothing has happened like it since. I just don't know what happened to that time. I have a similar story, but much smaller. My husband lives around a 5-minute walk from the shop I used to work in. Literally down the road and a left turn into the high street. I was due at 6 a.m. so my phone alarm went at around 5:15. So I got up, got myself ready etc. and headed out the door at around 5:45, as usual. Just as I hit the left turn, I get a phone call from my manager demanding to know where I was, as it was 20 to 8 in the morning and they had to open on their own. I have no explanation of how a 5-minute journey on foot turned into nearly 2 hours. As far as I was concerned, I was just walking down the road. I even checked the date to make sure the clocks hadn't gone back forward overnight. Also, being that close to the high street, if I had passed out or something, then I'm sure somebody would have found me. I have no idea what happened, and of course nobody at work believed me and just thought I'd left my house late and not called in. I drove from my house to work, a straight line on a 2-lane street, and had this happen. The seizure, stroke explanation would be more comfortable to me, as it's at least a normal experience, but I don't know how I could have had 4 hours vanish without someone noticing me blocking the road. If it happened recently enough, you could check Google Maps on your phone to see where you were, as Maps keeps a log of your phone's location history. Not quite sure how young I was at the time, but it was probably between 5-8. I was in my babysitter bed at the time in her trailer park. It was 3 a.m. I had woken up because I had to pee. When I woke up, I looked down the hallway to see my babysitter leaning against the wall like one of the stereotypical cool guys do in movies, and I made eye contact and I felt my body go cold because she was still sound asleep next to me in bed. I went under the blankets trying to hide, and when I looked back, she was gone. I didn't want to sound crazy, so I've never told anyone. I just sat in her bed watching infomercials until 6 a.m. when she woke up. Never even thought about sleeping there again. I honestly forget how much this affected me until I started writing this. Really freaked me out, man. I forget the name of it, but there's something that happens rarely after you wake up. You can feel like you're still in a dream and you can have hallucinations. If this is related, I've dealt with sleep paralysis in high school, where I'd have a tall shadow man slowly approach me with malicious intent so powerful I could feel and I couldn't move. That might be worst, but I was able to figure out what it was. For those suggesting that you shoot it since it's a good gateway to lucid dreaming, it does not work. I dealt with it every single night throughout sophomore year and I couldn't move even the slightest. It struck me with such great fear, even though I expected it. I had to try wiggle anything. Usually a finger or my eyelid would move a little right as he was going to grab me. Each time I successfully wiggled, I woke up. I've had that same shadow man experience the majority of my life. It's one of my very first memories, in fact. When I see him, he's tall and always has a hat on. However, he's so tall I can never tell where it ends. Now I sleep face down to make sure I don't see him. I get this from time to time. It's called a hag here. I was walking to class from the dining hall on my campus when I saw a lady yelling for help and banging on a window of a nearby building. Lots of people were walking past, but I was the only one who seemed to acknowledge it. I went to the window to help and she told me she was locked in a room in the building and that she needed me to come in and open the door. Now, I have no idea the layout of this building and where she was located, so I decided to call campus security for help despite her pleading with me not to call the men to just let her out. I call them, and when I hear them coming, I go to greet them so I can take them to the window. I leave for maybe a maximum of 15 seconds, and when I return with campus security, she is gone. We can't see her at the window, and campus security goes inside to double check, and sure enough, there is no trace of her. Campus security definitely thought I was crazy, and I'm sure my professor thought I was full of shit when I explained to him why I was late. No one seems to believe me that this happened, but I swear it did. FAQs. I am female. It is a very old campus with lots of random historic buildings that people don't really use, and this building was one of them. The area has a very high crime rate, so it probably was a robbery. I think maybe one explanation is that she was somewhere she wasn't supposed to be, and security arriving would have led to her being in trouble. So, she hid or found another way out, or, you know, aliens, or ghosts. Had my laptop in my bed just before going to sleep, not plugged in, on battery. Made an offhand comment on some website about how I wasn't scared of ghosts and didn't believe in them. Then I turned it off and went to sleep with the laptop beside me in my bed. Next morning when I try to power it on, nothing happens, but the laptop feels unusually light. That's when I realized the battery had been physically removed and placed in the kitchen. I was alone in my apartment and do not have a history of sleepwalking at all. Disgruntled ghost carrying your battery to the kitchen. I'll teach him not to believe in ghosts. Ed. Formatting and holy shit you guys thanks. To be honest, that is the type of petty ghost I would be. Agreed. I wouldn't want to necessarily terrify anyone, but I'd probably be petty. Grouchy and a smart ass. I'm going to jump on this train and say, absolutely. I would be mildly, subtly haunting the shit out of people. Switching keyrings around on the key rack. Shuffling shampoo around in the shower. You left a to-go cup on the counter, with a still in the wrapper straw? Now the star is unwrapped and in the drink. I've pressed down all the little flavor indicator buttons on the lid, and the paper is turned into 2 small pieces and 1 long piece, and arranged into a smiley face on the counter. Maybe to balance those out, I'll hang out in your living room and turn the TV volume down. Mute Spotify every time commercials come on. Not sure if it counts as creepy or overall scary, but it was weird. Back in high school I lived in a large apartment complex. It was maybe around 8-9 at night and completely dark. I was with a group of friends, 4 or 5 people. We were just talking and messing around with a friend's pair of walkie-talkies as we decided to look up in the sky as 2 fireballs, or what can be described as fireballs, just appear in the sky and slowly move in a line. Just as it happened, we started getting what sounded like military communication over said walkie-talkies that was really static, but words came in every now and then. About 10 or so minutes later the fireballs disappeared and the communication cut out. There was absolutely nothing about this on the news the next morning, and no one ever believed me. I experienced the same thing with some friends. However, the news did a special report and said it was space junk that entered our atmosphere. You could even hear the things. Sounded just like what you would expect fireballs to sound like. Honestly, that sounds really convincing to me. Only difference is I didn't hear anything from the fireballs. I believe you saw the same thing, but in a different country. Moved and disappeared exactly like you described it. Can't be completely sure of the year. Wrote 2001 in my post here, but could have been a few years either way. A few years ago I was driving to student teaching down the central coast of California early one morning and the radio started going staticky and then a bright green fireball went across the sky. It was awesome looking, so I believe you. Footsteps and banging in my attic. For about 2 months, almost every night I would hear from my attic. The steps are only like 5 feet from my room. Small taps or footsteps. Then it gradually got louder to the point it sounded like an audible foot was pressing on the wood. I told my dad and he told me it was probably an animal that got up there or something. Thing is, my sister heard it too as her bedroom was in the same hallway as mine. My dad might have been right, as it was completely gone after 2-3 months and right now at 2 a.m. I don't hear it, and I swear to God if I hear it after I post this I'm actually gonna piss my pants. Something like this happened to me and my sister as well. We both slept upstairs in separate rooms on opposite ends of a short hallway. It was only our 2 bedrooms on the top floor. I'd often hear typing on a keyboard or soft steps walking down the hall to the stairs in the middle of the night. It was so natural and clear sounding that I never questioned it. It was during the time where MSN was popular and I just figured my sister was up past her bedtime chatting or had to use the bathroom, which was downstairs. This went on for all of my childhood, with me not thinking anything of it. I moved out of my parents' house around 10 years ago now, and a couple years ago, my sister and I were chatting. She brought up that I kept her up with my constant keyboard clacking and trips to the bathroom at night. Turns out, we had been hearing the same noises at night growing up and assumed that was the other one making them. We both felt the same way about the noises, almost nostalgic and certainly not threatened. I guess this isn't super scary, and I don't know if it really fits, but it still weirds me out and my friends just think I'm crazy. Back when I was a freshman in college I went out with a friend of mine. He ended up dancing with some girl, so I went and grabbed a seat at the bar. Girl came up to me and bought me a drink, because she liked my style and introduced herself as Sapphire. We chatted for at least an hour, had a few drinks, and at some point she said she had to leave. So I asked for her number and she scribbled it onto a bar napkin. But then we ended up chatting more and one thing led to another and she invited me to her apartment. We go there and start hooking up and she asks if I've ever tried acid and if I wanted to do some. I said sure. After it kicks in we go for a walk. We were talking about the constellations and space for a while, but then I noticed she got quiet. I had my eyes glued to the sky for the entire walk, so I look over, and she's gone. I freak out and start retracing my steps to get back to her place, yelling her name and checking bushes. My high ass assumed she was just peeing in a bush. Get back to her apartment, knock on the door, and some guy answers the door. Keep in mind this was like 4 a.m. at this point, Some guy answers and I ask if he knew Sapphire and described her. He said he had no clue who I was talking about and to just go home. So I did. I ended up crashing at a friend's place because my trip was going south and I knew he'd be able to calm me down. Next day comes and I'm still trying to figure out what happened to her. I call the number she gave me. It was disconnected. Went back to the apartment. Same guy answers. Still no idea what I'm talking about. Even knocked on some of the neighbors and tried the same room location on different floors. Nothing. Talked to the security guy at the front desk. Said he remembers me coming in a few times, but never saw me with a girl. Called up my friend who was at the bar with me and asked if he saw the girl I was with. He said he never saw me with a girl. According to him, I was sitting at the bar alone for a bit, had a few drinks, and left after like 30 minutes. I have no idea who this woman was, or if she even existed, but I remember her so vividly I can't believe that I imagined it. She just vanished. I have no tangible proof of her existence. Freaks me out to this day that I spent an entire night with this person who didn't exist. I still don't know what happened that night. What if in another dimension, this girl Sapphire has a story about a guy she met at a bar, drank with, gave him her number, tried acid with at her apartment, went on a walk with him taking about the constellations when he just disappears never to be seen again. Someone please write this sci-fi love saga for me. If she didn't exist, where did you get the assing? No? I'm tripped out for you. I'm bothered we'll never know what actually happened. I was at the scene of a suicide work-related. Guy shot himself with a shotgun, right under the chin. When I walked in, a black cat was sitting in his blood and staring at me. Really weird. That's some Lynchian shit. In the same room of my old house, I have seen a convulsed face floating outside my window. My brother has also seen it too. I saw the same face over a number of periods and it would do stuff like smile and float closer and further from the glass. Our youngest brother a few years later complained that he didn't want to play with the boy in his room anymore as he was getting too much blood on his toys. It was the same room. Real shit going here. Enough scrolling. It's okay, just don't look behind you when you're walking upstairs, and if your room suddenly gets cold, it's a great idea to get under the covers fully. Don't worry about turning on the heating at night. You really had to mention the stairs thing. I'm atheist and I've never believed in any paranormal thing, but every time that I go upstairs in the night I feel a huge need to look behind because I feel like I'm in danger. It's weird. Also, to get into my bedroom you gotta pass through a long hallway. Same feeling there. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please smash the like button and leave a comment which story you liked the most. Subscribe and hit the bell notification for updates on our latest videos. And don't forget to check the links in the description box for more awesome content.